Oh yes, this is the Hardcore Marketing Show. I'm Casey Cheshire, your host for this epic journey. Today's show is sponsored by Ringmaster, on a mission to launch B2B podcasts that create relationships, generate revenue, and drive growth. Ringmasterlive.com. Bam. Yeah, there it is. Here we go. We are on. We are green. We are going. This interview, this conversation. I can't wait. I'm so glad other people get to hear this because talking to this person is so much fun and I can't help but learn things throughout the time. And so let me introduce you to today's guest. She is a marketing leader and thought leader, an entrepreneur, and really just a total badass. Very strong, innovative voice in the content and SEO marketing world, a prolific author, NPR, the HuffPost, NBC News, PBS, all these different places, not just doing it for clients, but also doing it for herself. So she is writing, she's creating. We're going to learn a lot from her today. Founder and CEO of Podreacher, Jaclyn Schiff. Welcome to the show.
Casey, it's so great to be here with you. Thank you for that amazing introduction.
Yes. The running joke is you can clip that and make that your wake up alarm on your phone in the morning, ladies and gentlemen. So good. Well, I'm so glad you're here. There's so many things to talk about. You are so knowledgeable in the areas of content, SEO, and content repurposing, and just being efficient in the creation of content and also making sure it actually is effective. So I just can't wait to open Pandora's box. And the way we do that here is pick this thing up. It's heavy, but I know you're going to get this. Here you go. You want to grab that? You got to grab it. Yeah, there you go. Oh, wow. One-handed. People just one hand, backhanded Thor's hammer like it was, a pencil. But anyways, that's Thor's hammer. Take it, smash for me some kind of marketing myth, bogus strategy, misconception. Just set the record straight once and for all.
Love it. So the myth that I'm going to smash for your listeners is you're maybe making transcripts for your webinar, your podcast episode, your video, and you're thinking, I'm good on SEO. Not true. Not true. A transcript is not an SEO optimized piece of content. Now, it's a great building block. It's a great content building block, and it's good for a lot of reasons. But is it this like magic juice that I think a lot of people think it is for SEO? It's not. And we can get into exactly why, but that's the myth.
Sometimes we have myths that sort of been said before, but this is one of those myths that, my goodness, I hear this all the time. Why do we think, is it just because there's so much content? Like a transcript can be really long and full of these juicy keywords. If I keep saying podcast, content repurposing, hey, now our transcript has it in there 3 times. What is that? Why? Like, why do we think these things are so valuable?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And so I think it's often repeated, people are like, get a transcript for SEO. And I think, so there is this idea in SEO that a piece of content needs to be a certain length for it to be recognized as valuable by Google. And if you have a transcript, obviously that is a verbatim record of your conversation or, your speech, whatever it is, right? So it's usually good on the length. And to your point, it probably does have a lot of keywords from whatever it is you're discussing. But without massaging that into a way that is more meaningful to someone who would actually be searching for that content, that's where the disconnect is. So again, it's great to have a record of your conversation. And it's also like, it makes the content more accessible because some people might, if it's a podcast, some people might be hard of hearing. And so this makes a transcript means that they can access exactly what was said. So there's important uses for it, but on its own, one of the major missing pieces, and I probably alluded to this just a little bit before, is that a big part of SEO is search intent. So when someone's searching for something, they are looking for a response to a question. And if you have a whole printout of a conversation, it doesn't do that in a way that is helpful to the end user or to Google.
Yeah, and Google knows that because
Google
it's
is getting
keeping track, right?
It's getting smarter about figuring that out all the time. I also I know some people do like to read transcripts. They are out in the wild. I personally do not.
Who are those people?
I hear this, right? And I'm sure that's another thing we'll get to, right? Is that your readers, listeners, your community, they have different ways of absorbing content, and some people might want and like the full transcript for a lot of different reasons. But a lot of people don't prefer to ingest content in that way, and they certainly are probably not going to share it like that. So all these things go into, Google's taking these things into account into saying, is this the first thing that someone should see in their search query?
You're right. If I ask a question, yeah, even this, let's like make this like super meta, not the Facebook kind, the regular kind.
Okay, good.
So if I was curious to know if transcripts were great for SEO, I would search that. And if I got the transcript for this show, and we'll make that available for people so we can kind of all see things and make this super weird that we're in it while we're talking about being in it, like the Matrix. But if I searched for that answer, and to your point, if I found the transcript, in this show, you answer it right toward the beginning, but not necessarily in every show. And maybe there's a point you make an hour from now. So just linking to the transcript, unless you're going to link to like that particular part of it. And I've done that. I've clicked on something on Google where the answer is in the page somewhere. And it's like, oh man, where's that answer? How do I find it? And that's the worst. And then I click back, and I know Google knows that I've clicked back, and I'm coming back for more because that page didn't quite answer it for me. So I totally get it, right? Your answer's you're not giving them an answer. It's like a kid asking a parent some question about the world, and they're like, here's the encyclopedia, figure it out. It's like not helpful, Dad.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And it's, I like that you brought in the example of this conversation.
Yeah.
Because I think that does, it kind of like helps you wrap your head around it. So yeah, that's the gist with transcripts. And again, like, I'm not saying don't do them. Okay. That's never my advice. But it's not like, again, it's not a magic bullet for your SEO.
Okay. So it has some practical uses. We're not saying don't do it. It's not worth freaking out about, not worth investing a lot of time or money in, but if you can get it easily, go for it. And if that's the case, what should we do? If that's not the magic answer, if that content doesn't get repurposed, and maybe it ties to that massaging you were talking about, what is the right answer? What should we be trying to create out of video and all that?
It's a great question. So going back to the point of transcript being a building block of content, one of the easiest things you could do, right, is to just take excerpts from that transcript and include maybe an introduction. So what is this conversation about? What is the question that is being responded to? And then, again, if your goal is SEO, you're hopefully tying this to what are people searching for? Like, how does this connect to a person's question? So the introduction should answer that. And then, without getting too in the weeds with SEO, you want to have some H2s on the page.
You can go in the weeds. That's fine. It's a hardcore marketing show. We can handle it for just a little bit. I'll let you know if it blows my brain out.
Okay, good. I'm relying on you for that.
Yes, I will.
But so, adding some H2s that incorporate, some of your keywords that help, make this a more digestible piece of content. And then I think there's other things that you can do to, again, make it more readable, more valuable to your reader. Yeah. And ultimately, big picture, what's good SEO about? It's about creating content that, not just responds to search intent, isn't just targeting keywords, but overall is good and helpful for your reader and better than other resources out there. So that's like, at a high level, you can just take that transcript and do a few things, massage it. Now, next steps beyond that is, turn it into more of an article, right? So and I would differentiate this from, slicing and dicing a transcript, because so I might say the most interesting thing in this conversation, like 25 minutes in, right?
Sure.
So stay tuned.
Ideally not, because no one's listening, and yeah.
But so let's say I do. So in an article, that might be your lead. This is where you're taking a transcript and you're really only taking like the key quotes. You're maybe doing some supplemental research, and you're making it into, something that's really an original piece of content. So it's not just verbatim form of the conversation we're having, but it contextualizes it for the reader. It goes a step above and beyond. So that would be the next step. And those are two possibilities. Now, there's obviously tons of ways to repurpose content.
Yeah.
We focus, and I focus really on taking recordings and doing, and turning them into long form pieces. And so that's obviously where my head goes.
Right. And that's a key part here, because I know we'll talk a little more about your company in a little bit, but one of the reasons we started chatting is because that's what your company does. So when you're describing these techniques, these are things you're doing every day, and so you understand them completely. And so if I were to think about this overall conversation, we've talked about don't rely on the transcript, but it is a building block, and then that can turn into, you can massage it first, and now you have a better piece of content, or you can just create a whole other article. And so there's another thing you can do. And then it sounds like, or you can create even a completely different kind of piece of content out of that.
Yeah. Again, so thinking of the transcript as a building block.
Yeah. By the way, sorry, you've said that a couple of times. And I keep meaning to ask you, tell me about the idea of the transcript as a building block.
Sure. Yeah, it's a good question. So, going back to this, what is a transcript? It's the verbatim record of your conversation or whatever you're having transcribed. So the building block is so I come from a journalism background. So it always helps me to explain it this way. So when you're doing journalism, right, you interview sources, you interview people, and you're trying to get different pieces of information from them. And then you take all those different pieces and you put it together in one article that's maybe, let's say, 1,000 words, that is intended to give the reader a view, a snapshot of whatever it is you're reporting on. So when I say a building block, I mean, it's, maybe you're transforming one conversation, maybe you're transforming several and combining them, but either way, it's just, it's a tool to help you create something else.
I like that. Right. So it's like it's a tool, or it's a piece of the house that you're building. It's not the thing, but it might be a really important part of it. And to your point, it might be one of the critical ways that you source information. You actually have the words written down. It makes it easier to write that other content.
Exactly. So this idea that it's a resource, and it's something that you can use, as a piece of I liked your point, right, of the house that you're building. It's that's kind of like, where it fits in like overall content strategy in my mind.
Now, is it as important as the foundation because you can build the whole house on it, or is that giving it too much credit?
So you're saying is a transcript like the foundation? That is a good question. I mean, I would say the source material is the foundation.
Good call. That's a much better point. Yeah. Yeah.
And then
much better point.
the transcript is a piece that is derived from that source material.
That's awesome. First time a guest has ever disagreed with me on my own podcast. Don't know how I can handle this. No, totally. No, I agree. That makes a lot more sense that it's not the original. It's just a helper, but it's not the original. The original is the source, which is again why the transcript. Why you told us at the beginning. Not the transcript is not the foundation. Transcript's not your SEO juice. It's just a helper. It's a tool. To your point.
Yeah, it
is.
The
original source is the most of the materials. Yeah,
I think so. Yeah.
Well, now that we figured that metaphor out, tell me about content repurposing. I mean, so you're routinely taking an original source file of a podcast like this one, or a webinar, any other kind of video interview, or monologue or whatever, and you're turning it into, what kind of things do you create from one little interview?
Yeah, no, so it's a good question. So we'll take any recording. So whether it's an interview like this one, or a webinar, or a virtual conference session, presentations make for really great pieces of written content. And we'll turn those into, usually a blog post, sometimes an ebook, sometimes a white paper. Sometimes we've even taken sales calls and turned those into like customer stories. So there's there's unlimited possibilities to repurpose. I know also we were going to talk about, so we kind of think about that in 4 steps.
Please tell me.
Well, yeah. And so I was like, should we get into those now or whatever? So
but these like the 4 steps to like actually do the repurposing?
Exactly right.
Got it. So you're saying you could create anything. Now, do you have like your top list of the things you like or think that are most beneficial to repurpose into before we get into the how you do it?
So I think everything that I just mentioned, it really did. It all starts with like your marketing plan, right?
Okay.
And or really more specifically, your content marketing plan. And this is one of my, I will die on this hill with podcasts specifically, but I think a lot of times, and this happens for a lot of different reasons, people are like, let's create a podcast. That's the hot channel. It's a hot marketing channel, but it's sort of divorced from the rest of your content strategy. And there's no good reason for that, right? Everything you're doing, content should talk to each other. And I think for a lot of marketers, and especially marketers that are trying to get at like executive thought leadership, having a conversation is a lot easier and more feasible than, maybe getting that executive, or even you yourself get like writing up, a mammoth thought leadership piece that explains why you do what you do. And, it's kind of like the signature piece of content. So what I love about podcasts is it provides a forum to do that. And then, that's another block in the house. I hope this analogy makes sense at the end, but so you've got that, right? And then you've got the recording for people that prefer to listen, because the other key part with content strategy in 2021, now going into 2022, is, you got to be where the audience is. And depending on the time of day, the type of person, people consume content differently. And, you want your strategy to be as frictionless as possible. So if I'm in the mood today to read and skim something, and that's going to make me want to hear more from you, bring me into your ecosystem, make me sign up for your newsletter, that should be available. I shouldn't have to listen to it. It shouldn't only be available to me in one form. I mean, that's just good marketing.
Right.
So I think I'm getting kind of outside of the original question.
Sure. But it makes sense though. I totally get it.
Yeah. And I think the point here is that all these different things you're doing ideally are part of a master content marketing plan. and it all fits together. So ideally, you're thinking about what that looks like at the start. So if we're starting a podcast, why are we doing this podcast? And then what other pieces of content are we going to make with it? That's where, I think teams tend to see the strongest results.
It's funny, as much as sometimes I want to geek out, especially with some like a topic like what you and I are talking about. I love that you reminded us, like, okay, don't fixate on this cool tactic. Let's make sure it's a part of an overall strategy. And when you started talking about podcasts, I was like, oh, where's this going? But I totally agree. You don't want to make this thing an island unto itself. It should integrate. The company should point at the podcast at the company, the brand. It should all be the same. It doesn't have to be the same brand, but like it should all mean the same thing. It should be going in the right direction. And you shouldn't be like two different personalities, my podcast personality and then our company personality. It should really be authentically the same.
Yeah, they should talk to each other for sure.
They should, right? But I digress. Really what I want to dive into now is the how. And I appreciate the fact that you're going to take us to those nerdy levels of like, how do you repurpose? What's your approach?
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. And thank you for bringing me back there. Cause I was like,
where are we?
And out there. I know. So let's say you've decided to take a recording and, again, could be a podcast episode, could be a webinar, could be a virtual conference session, could be some other YouTube video. And you're like, okay, I would like this to be a great blog post that tells people what we're about. So the first step that we think about when we do this is to actually to think about what is the end use, okay? Because that's going to dictate everything else. So is it going to be a blog post on your blog? Where's it going to live? Are you going to publish it as a thought leadership piece on LinkedIn? Are you going to go for, and we've done this, try get it published in a media outlet or an industry publication, because that's going to dictate how you write it. So make that strategic decision up front. Because for example, if you, so there was someone that we worked with, and they took their podcast interviews and repurposed it into content that was published in CIO magazine. So a magazine for, chief information officers. And so they have their own style guide. So the reason I say you want to think about this before is because you can like Google and see, they usually have contributor guidelines, something like that. So you want to make sure, what's their word count? What kinds of headlines do they expect? So make that decision up front. That's the first step. The next step is to actually listen and review the piece of content. So if it's a video, if it's a recording, to go through it. Now, sometimes maybe you were the person who did the interview and you're like, oh, I remember what we discussed in the conversation or something, you just want to maybe do it from memory, which would be convenient, but there's a lot of reasons you probably don't want to rely on your memory. First of all, it might not actually be correct. But second of all, is that when you're listening or reviewing the recording, and this is really important for, especially if you're thinking about SEO, you want to listen to the conversation through the lens of the intended audience. So who ultimately is going to read this? Why are they going to read it? And you want to be listening for those nuggets, those gems of information that are going to come up. And that might be a slightly different viewpoint than, your perspective on it, right? So you want to review the information with the end reader in mind. Really important to do as you're reviewing it. And this is also where the transcript comes in. You probably want to listen, view it with the transcript in hand, and you want to highlight, those important quotes. So was something said in, and was it phrased in a really memorable way? You totally want to use that as a direct quote. But sometimes people will, talk about concepts and maybe they skip around. I've probably done it a few times in this conversation. And so, what you're looking for in the transcript there is, okay, she talked about this 10 minutes in, then she actually built on that idea further down. So that's, when you're actively listening to this, you're paying attention to gathering those details. And again, to make it as valuable a piece for the end reader as possible. So
how important is the audience? I know you've mentioned that.
I think it's really important because why are we creating content? It's for it's to be shared, to be read by an ideal person. So I think you really,
that's a great quote right there. You can highlight that in your transcript.
Thank you. Making this easy for me, but
right. Should we tell everyone our experiment, or should we get to the rest of your list first?
No, I'm happy to.
Just for people listening, we're going to actually repurpose this podcast episode, and Jackie's gonna use her magic powers to repurpose this, and we're gonna link to it in the show notes. So by the time you're listening to this, we're going to do those things, and we'll have a link to the transcript and all this. And she wants us to be able to learn from and see what it looks like. And so whatever we're talking about, and the joke is that knowing that we know this is going to be turned into articles and repurposed, or it's like, hey, that's why I asked if I could get a quote out of you, try to make it easier. But I digress. That's the fun underlying part of this, is that we're going to actually do everything you're saying. You're going to go through these steps and repurpose the content.
Yeah, no, and it was a great idea that you had, Casey. Hopefully I'm not giving away any trade secrets, but we had a pre-interview call, which I thought was really great. And we were discussing this, and you mentioned it, and I was like, that's great, because I think there's no clearer way than, if someone does listen to this and then they'll see the transcript, they'll see, your episode page, and then they'll see the article. They're very different deliverables, and they have very different use cases. So I'm excited about it. Me
too. So with that being said, back to our show.
Okay.
Let's talk about these repurposing steps.
Okay. So yeah, I've spoken about the first two, right? So
yes.
How are you using it? Actively listen with the transcript in hand, thinking about, your end reader. So once you've listened, step number 3 is to actually write the piece. And so this is, again, what's differentiating a transcript from, turning it into a long form article. And so I mentioned, one of the things that we're always looking for is, what was the interesting take? What's the interesting angle from a conversation? And that's probably going to be, early, on the top of your article. It might even be the lead, part of the introduction. And again, maybe we're still waiting for it in this conversation, right? It might only come, a couple minutes in. But so the writing process, this is where you kind of know what it's about. What's going to interest the end reader, and you're organizing and structuring the piece in a way that's going to be useful and meaningful to them. But I guess a good way to think about it is, I think every piece of content you should know the value proposition for that piece of content. So when you're writing the article, it's what differentiates this? Why will people want to read this rather than other things? And gotcha. You really want to be able to convey that when you write it up. So now you've written it up.
Well, real quick on that, the value prop, and it's kind of interesting. We actually, when you first smashed the myth, when we talked specifically about transcripts, it's almost like that's its own article. And so maybe, and tell me if I'm crazy, but then that's a question that people could be searching. And then the idea of, okay, how do you repurpose video content into audio, or into other forms, or into a written format? Mm-hmm. This would be a second one where we're here's how to do it. and I guess it helps that the speakers have sort of arranged things. Like we've done a little bit of good work beforehand, little prep call to figure out the best format. And then, the sort of ringmaster methodology sort of tries to front load that, knowing that repurposing is a great idea. But I'm sure sometimes you get articles where, two people just going off on a conversation, jumping around all over the place. I mean, does that make it near to impossible to repurpose, or what do you do?
So yeah, you've hit on something that we see a lot of, and that is that, some conversations are not linear. And that's one of the reasons I said, like, presentation really lends itself well to that, because usually those are a little more linear, and like people's thoughts are organized. Whereas a conversation, especially sometimes, people are talking about different ideas, feeding off each other, jumping around to different parts, maybe referencing part of the conversation later. And that's the work of the writing process. There are some conversations that just, won't make for, a good piece of content, a good piece of written content. But, what we've found is, so sometimes people will send us 45 minutes of audio, and it's like what you described. It's a little bit all over the place. They're covering a lot of topics, but what you usually find, even within a conversation like that, they could be 10 minutes where, there's something really clear and interesting in that. And so maybe your article just kind of covers that. And in fact, we do that a lot. I tell our writers that, like, rule of thumb is you're probably only going to use 40% of the recording in the actual written piece.
Right.
So there's a lot you're not using. And again, to like throw it back to podcast interviews, I like the way you like flip the script on this, but you are atypical.
Sure. I've heard that a lot too, by the way. Everyone tells me that.
And I think it's a good thing.
Especially my teachers. You are atypical, and that does not mean you get an A.
But the way in which I was meaning you're atypical is you a lot of times dig into people's backgrounds towards the end of the conversation.
Right.
A lot of podcasts will spend 15, 20 minutes doing that at the front end. And that makes for a good listening experience sometimes. But when you're writing, let's say, we're writing this up, and this is really a conversation about content repurposing, people don't really need to know my backstory.
No, they really don't.
Right.
And see, and I know we talked a little bit about this, but in my opinion, people don't actually care, and not in a mean way, but they don't know who you are. Why should I listen? Right. And so I'm like, why do I care? But after hearing, and we'll eventually get to your background, but after hearing, like, wow, she repurposes all this stuff. And we heard a hint of a journalism background, that gets people curious to the point of, okay, now I am curious, kind of, where did this information come from? But in my opinion, they don't care at the beginning. It sounds like that's where you're getting at.
Yeah, no. And again, like, I appreciate that you do that. I think it's a thoughtful approach. I think the extent to which readers care about someone's background is, why is this person an authority, or why should I listen to them?
Yeah.
And so when we're thinking about turning a recording into text, like a blog post or something, that might end up being a sentence or two, right? So in this case, for me, people might find me authoritative because I run a company that does only this type of content writing. But right. That's all they need to know, right? Like, they don't need to know she was a journalist back in 2010. Like,
right. And when I think about the structure of even this podcast, the introduction, I have this crazy introduction that I almost lose myself in. There's so many things to say, and that sort of sets this, like, okay, people. And everyone's like, well, you say nice things every time, but that's because I interview cool people every time. But here's this great introduction. Believe whatever she says. We'll tell you more later. Meanwhile, let's get on with the juicy stuff. And then here it comes right off the gate,
Yep. And I love that you you do the work of that.
Yeah.
There are a lot of podcast hosts that are like, introduce yourself, right? And you have feelings about that?
Yeah, tell me about yourself. All right. Well, I was born in Virginia and I like mint chocolate chip. Nice to meet you. You know what? I'll do that. Next time someone ever asks me to do my own introduction, I will literally just I will purposefully make it an accurate but completely unhelpful introduction. Well, my name is Casey. I like mint chocolate chip. Taco Bell is the food I would make healthy if I could. And if I could live anywhere, it would be Ireland or maybe Italy. Great to be here. Like,
and
okay.
Now that's gonna throw the show, right?
Well,
like,
to your point though, then people are like, well, why am I listening to this guy? You know, so anything I say,
yes.
other than he just broke all the rules, curious. But other than that, there's no authority developed just yet.
But it's interesting because you would be going so off script, it actually might get people's attention. But the point I would make there is there are some things that like we have more tolerance for in audio or video that don't play as well in other formats. And you know, the example that I like to give is you know, and like anyone that knows marketing, hopefully this will resonate with them. You wouldn't like write a tweet or like a Twitter thread and then throw that up exactly on LinkedIn, right? Because you've got to like optimize things based on the context.
Yeah.
And you know, like in a very basic way, what I see us doing is optimizing audio or video for text.
Yeah, you know what? That's such a great point. Like I love nerding out on this stuff and the idea that people have tolerance for things on audio and video, probably because they have the contextual information and they can hear and understand the feelings. But I think of Gary V, you know, and anyone who knows Gary V, but if you don't, you should, anyways, thought leader guy, but he doesn't care. He really doesn't give a fuck, right? And so, but he will drop F-bombs like it's and it somehow freaking sounds cool when he does it. Like he's got his knit hat on and he's like, doesn't care, maybe just shaved, and he's just talking the truth. And you're just like, say it, Gary. And some people try to be him and it just like, it doesn't really sound, but I don't know if I could read Gary V dropping F-bombs. Like that would just, it might be different. And I bet you they don't transcribe him word for word.
Well, and even if they do, that's the like when you read something from Gary V, and who knows how many ghostwriters he has, it's not, it's different. There's not a million F-bombs. There's probably one or two, like so that it's authentic to him.
Right.
But yeah.
It's like, it's fucking right. Like, okay, you leave that one in, but not like, fuck, man, fuck. Like, it's like, oh God. I can't let my kids look at this transcript. It's terrible.
Exactly.
So okay, so they have tolerance for different things. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Number 4, I think.
Number 4.
Okay. We wrote the piece and now it's time. What comes after writing the piece?
Okay. Well, I appreciate you queuing me up because I was like, where did we end up?
There's some people that are gonna be mad at me if you know what? I should do a show where I just I'm like, there's 7 things. I speak to 5 and then I have to go.
So that actually is a perfect example because that's another thing when you're writing. And step number 4 is editing. And you also want to pay attention to this in the editing process. So common, right? We don't, and this is also speaking to your point with Gary V. We don't write the way we speak, okay? And we don't speak the way we write.
Are you sure? Because I try to write. I think I try to write the way I speak.
So it's a great technique, but when you're actually speaking, I mean, I don't know many people that speak and then it's a perfect written piece.
You're right.
You got it. No, but like it's a great, like I do like that as a way to coach someone's writing, because that's the idea there is to make someone's writing sound more natural, and have a distinctive tone. But in actuality, it doesn't happen. We don't write the way that we speak. And an example is what you just pointed out. People say, there are 3 principles to this. And then they will talk about 2 and either not explicitly say the third, like they won't say 1, 2, 3, unless it's a planned presentation. Or unless they have a really great podcast host who's like, let's get to step number 4, that like coaches it out of them. So people will always like say, I'm going to give you 3 points, and then they won't explicitly say what it is. So your job when you're turning that into written content is to listen for that, or to not say there's 3 points if there aren't actually 3 points to deliver on. Right. And that happens a lot.
Wow. Yeah. Huge. And kind of a pet peeve of mine, because it's like I'm not OCD, but I think I might be with that because I feel like I can picture, okay, 4 things, 1, 2, and I do try to say, okay, third, blah, 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 4th, because I kind of mentally can picture that when I do that. But I can imagine editing is critical for this, because if you forget that, it's glaring on paper. Like maybe if our storytelling was just so amazing, people might forgive us. Some people won't, but on paper, it's like the 4 reasons to repurpose content, and there's 3 shown. What happened?
Yeah. So there's tons of things you're looking for in the editing process. This is definitely one of them. Does it flow? Is it a good reader experience? Like, does it respond to a question that someone might have? But then the other things you're looking for, apart from, flow, grammar, and all these things that we typically think of with editing, is, again, coming back to the audience. So is it positioned for your target audience? Like a lot of times there are certain, like, just buzzwords that work well with people in certain industries. And so in editing, it's always useful to think, okay, if I'm writing this for marketers, what's something that's on their mind? What can I throw into a headline? And maybe we didn't so in this conversation, maybe we're not going to use a term, but like when we actually go back and, look at this conversation, we're like, oh, you know what? They're talking about content repurposing. But, here's another related thing that, is a keyword and is something that people are talking about, and we're going to include that. Let me give you a better example of that.
No, I like it. Yeah, keep going.
That we've actually worked on. So we work with a company that, so they're a podcast recording platform, and they have a podcast talking about podcasting, right? What else?
Hey.
So we take those episodes and turn them into blog posts for their blog. So they did an interview with a guy that runs one of the major podcast industry conferences. And so he's
Chris Krimitsos, great guy.
Exactly right. So Chris,
shout out to Chris.
He is awesome. I'm a huge fan.
Me too.
Podfest, excellent conference.
Yes. Sign up now. Podfest.com. I don't know, but maybe Chris, you can sponsor us next time, and we'll give the correct URL.
There you go. So Chris was interviewed on their podcast, and they're talking about how he connects people, and like he's super networked, and he is all of these things. Now, they didn't use the word super connector in their conversation, but we use that in the headline. And there's a lot of good reasons to do that. Like it's a bit of a clickbaity word. Who's the podcast industry super connector? Like everyone wants to know that. So, and obviously also from the perspective of Chris, that's kind of cool that, he's the podcast industry super connector. So, people are always thinking about, how do I get podcast guests to share this content? Well, if you create a headline that they're proud of, they'll probably share it.
That's a huge point. That's probably a great quote too, for everyone listening and repurposing, for all the producers and writers listening. That just there sounded like a pretty cool quote, maybe a little tweak there and there, but yeah, get people to share it by making them the star. Absolutely.
Yeah. And those are some of the opportunities. you have when you edit. You can just be
Yeah.
thoughtful about it. And the thing that's interesting, Casey, is a lot of times when I say editing, people are like, oh, I've got to hire an editor or something like that. And that's great. And hopefully you can, but, even a self-edit is good. And what does a self-edit mean? It means like, so maybe you write it up and you sleep on it. And I guarantee if you look at something the next day, you'll find ways to improve it.
100%. Yeah. Just you can't wait like an hour. You have to literally give yourself a day to forget what you wrote so you can read it with a little more critical eye. Because I've definitely written something and you try to reread it at the moment and you're just like, your brain still knows what should be there, even if it is or isn't. But yeah, you're right. You wait a day or two. Who knows what happens. Quick question relating to the editing. And this is kind of a fun one. What's your take on, you mentioned a little audience positioning and some keywords. What do you think about the idea that keyword stuffing, like putting a bunch of keywords in there, like putting a bunch of keywords, marketing related ones into this podcast, like MQL, lead generation, demand generation, ABM, account-based marketing, all these kind of great things. The secret to great marketing success.
I see what you did there.
Sales and marketing alignment driven by this podcast.
We could keep going. So, I think I never think that keyword stuffing is a good approach. And I think I'm sure like Google's kind of come out and been like, we don't like that. So the ideal with keyword research, and this goes back to an earlier concept, your content strategy should all kind of talk to each other. So ideally, before you make a recording, whether it's a webinar or a podcast or whatever, if the end goal is SEO, you do the keyword research ahead of time. You figure out what are people searching for and who's the expert I bring on to talk about that and to respond to potential questions that people have. That's that to me is the gold standard. Now, it's not possible for everyone. And I know we've talked a lot about SEO in this conversation. I don't think SEO is the only reason to create content. And I don't always think that, I think there's, especially with, B2B companies, there's a huge opportunity to do thought leadership that isn't necessarily SEO optimized, that helps your brand connect with the people that you're trying to reach. And
great quote.
And to me, so that stuff like doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be keyword focused. And just because something isn't keyword focused doesn't mean it's not going to rank, right? Sometimes things rank, even when you don't go in with a whole planned SEO strategy. But I am getting away from your question again. You asked about keyword stuffing, and I think that, I advise against it. I think, if you have keywords, and you can also do keyword research after the fact. So you can, this conversation, we could do some keyword research afterwards and see, what does this map to? Is there search volume for content repurposing or content optimization or something? And if it flows and it fits within the piece and it's not going to detract from the reader experience, then include those keywords, but don't force them in there.
Right. I like that. I like that approach. Creating good content. That quote, to create connection with your buyer. Like, screw the SEO. Connect with your buyer. There's my quote. Everyone listening.
I like that quote, and that's what differentiates. Like when you're buying decisions. So we could go down that rabbit hole.
Well, there's another rabbit hole here right in front of us. And I just have to ask this, after hearing all these amazing things, and I've been learning from you, I almost have no paper left. Who are you? Can you take us back in time to like little Jackie days? What was it like growing up? Where'd you grow up? Did you always know you're going to be a content empress, diva of the written word? Like, tell me, did you know? Like, what was it like growing up?
So probably if you're listening to this, maybe you pick up hints of an accent. I don't really hear it, but sometimes people do. But
do I have an accent to you?
That's a great question. At this point, an American accent, and like, I don't know, you don't have like a Southern accent,
right?
But like,
not yet. A couple beers later, and then I'm like,
oh, really?
Oh, yeah, a little bit.
What happens?
Yeah, right. What happens?
What happens?
That'll be on the next episode. It'll be behind the scenes episode where it's like, let's feed Casey beer and see what he sounds like afterward.
Oh my gosh, Casey unplugged. I'm in for that.
Oh no, I don't know if anyone is, and the transcript would be so unruly. But so yeah, accent. Where does the accent from? What is that?
Yeah, so I grew up in South Africa.
Cool.
In Johannesburg, but have been in the US for 23 years. So I've been here a long time. Growing up, what did I think I would do? I think, so one thing that's always been, a big thing for me is I've always been like flummoxed by that advice. People are like, follow your passion, right? And I've always found that a difficult pill to swallow, because I feel like I've had a lot of passions. Like I have a lot of different interests, and there was never like one singular thing. I would say in the last few years, I've reframed that, and like looking on kind of my career or whatever, to follow your motivation rather than your passion. So like, what do you feel driven to do each day? And maybe it's not within a specific industry. Maybe it's like, I'll give you an example with me, right? Like I'm very deadline driven. Like there's a competitive streak to me, and like, I'm just never going to miss a deadline. So no wonder I've been drawn to journalism and client work and stuff like that, because I like that. I like every day, like gonna beat a deadline.
Yeah.
So I think of it as follow your motivation rather than your passion. But I think, growing up, if you'd asked me, there were probably times in my life where I was like, I want to be a reporter, a journalist. I think, going off to college, I thought I was going to be like Christian Amanpour.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was kind of a dream job.
Now, when did you come over to the US? You said you've been here for a bit. So how old were you?
Yeah, so when I was in high school, 15. So an interesting time to move.
Were you just like super pissed that your parents were doing that to you?
So yes, my brother and I moved here with my mom. My dad still lives in South Africa.
Okay.
And no, honestly, I wasn't pissed. But
you're 15, you have friends and everything.
I did. So, South Africa's interesting. I mean, I just grew up and like a lot of people leave, this big brain drain, unfortunately.
Gotcha.
So it was a kind of a reality of life. There's not, there's just not as many opportunities. And so like for me, I was like, I was excited to come to the US and grateful like to have the opportunity, because I kind of knew opportunities there were limited for me.
Well, that's exciting then. Yeah. So 15 and you're like, let's go.
Yeah, let's go. And then,
that's cool.
Adjusting to a new culture. I mean, that's an interesting thing. And
what stood out to you, or does anything still stand out to you as like a little bit different? I know you've been here for a bit, so you've kind of probably adopted most of it, but did anything stand out to you when you first came over?
I mean, a lot of things did. I'm trying to think of like, something obvious, but I think so truthfully, the fact that people get to drive in the US at 16, like in South Africa, the driving age is 18. So when I came here and I would write to my friends or whatever, they'd be like, oh, so I moved here at 15. So the next year I was driving, people were like, do you get to drive? It was the coolest thing.
USA, land of everyone gets a car. Like I'm driving at 16.
Yeah, totally. Which is crazy, right? Like, why do we let 16-year-olds drive?
I know.
But yeah, but it's fun when you're 16.
Yeah, it's a little scary too. I remember I used to think that the car in the other lane was gonna, like, I didn't know the perception, the depth perception. So they're in their lane, I'm in my lane, but I'm like, are we gonna hit? Are we gonna scrape mirrors? Like, I don't even know. But you're kind of hugging the side, but cars are actually thinner than the road. It just doesn't feel like it sometimes. But yeah,
no,
so
totally
crazy. And then when you went to school, you're thinking international, right? You're thinking, was it international affairs?
I did major in international affairs at George Washington in DC. And yeah, like I said, I was like, yeah, send me to Somalia or Kenya or something. I want to be Christian Amanpour. I want to, do the international reporting thing. So that was definitely a thing for a while. And honestly, I mean, out of college, I kind of got to do that, minus the super exotic travel, but I ended up being a reporter for a few years, focusing on global health policy. So definitely that international component. But policy meant, I was DC based most of the time.
Gotcha. Wow. And I don't know about Somalia though.
Well, I'm sure that I know they have a lot of global health stories worth telling in Somalia, but yeah, it didn't quite make it there yet.
Yeah. So that journalistic background, at what point did you decide not to be a journalist full time?
Yeah. I think once I saw my paycheck.
Yeah, fair enough.
No, I'm
Like, this is it.
I'm joking kind of, but so I came up at a time, like, let's see, how much do I want to date myself? But I came up at a time in journalism where local newspapers were closing left and right. It
doesn't date yourself.
It was changing a lot.
Yeah.
And it became clear that the opportunities that were once available in journalism weren't going to be there, and that, and especially now, it's kind of like, people go in young to news organizations. They kind of burn you out pretty quickly, and there's long-term career trajectories just for a kind of select few. And honestly, like, going back to that whole thing of having a lot of different interests, I like reporting. I love journalism. And I love a newsroom environment. Like, I really loved working in a newsroom, but I was also really interested in business and in the business side of content and stuff. And so, I think there was always that itch. And I was always interested in entrepreneurship too. So there were other things I wanted to explore.
Yeah. And there's the idea of a journalist background, getting into marketing, like, that makes the best content. Makes the best content.
It's helpful. Like, I like that I got to do that. And I think it's a useful lens. To me, it's always really interesting to hear people talk about content that don't have journalism in their background at all, right? It's like a different discussion. And I think
what's different about it?
So in journalism, like, especially if you've worked in a news organization, there are certain things that are just beaten into you, right? And you sort of come with these assumptions about, what is allowed. And I think that people that don't have that, in some ways, can be less restricted. They aren't tied to these journalistic conventions.
Oh, so it kind of in a bad way. So as a journalist, you have this framework put upon you, but some of it's good. I mean, the idea of stacking your information. So if you're only going to read 4 things, the most important 4 things are in the beginning. There's so many good things that are there some things that hold you back too? Like, you have to do the ALA and you have to
I think that both groups, so people who create content that come from a journalism background and the ones that don't come from a journalism background, I think they can learn a lot from each other.
Okay.
And that's why I love these conversations of like hearing those two groups talk to each other, because they each kind of come with different assumptions and different backgrounds and understanding of like what makes for good content. And you get a lot when you combine the two, I think. And
Amen.
Yeah.
That'd be a great podcast.
What, journalists talk to non-journalists
A
about
marketer versus journalist. Really, they're like the same person, but or you could be one of those Instagram, reels or whatnot, where it's the same person. They just, one puts on glasses and a jacket and they talk to each other,
Oh, I like that.
Yes. We're getting crazy on the show now.
Casey Unplugged.
Yeah, there it is. Casey Unplugged. It's much more like Joe Rogan that way. So tame. This show is so tame. So I have this hypothetical question for you. I may or may not have a time machine here in New Hampshire.
I know.
Now that was a proper sentence. That's pretty cool. So let's say you come visit, we get some beers, some lobster, and you can try out the time machine. It's in the backyard, covered in a tarp. So you get in this time machine, and it's a particular time machine because it goes back in time, and you get to meet yourself after graduating with that international affairs degree. You get to meet that version of you a couple days later. Now you're a grad. Now you're out in the real world. You get to meet that Jackie. What do you say to her? What kind of things would you encourage her, discourage her? What kind of things would you tell yourself?
Oh, it's a good question. So many things. Probably like change your hairstyle. No, I'm kidding. I've had the same hairstyle for a really long time. Honestly,
well, don't do bangs, right?
No, I haven't done that since I was like 4 and like cut my own bangs.
Oh no.
Yeah, my mom was not happy about that. So no, I think the advice, or I would say, is, and it's still something that I'm learning, and I think we're all learning, but to like learn to trust your instinct. I think there's a lot in life that kind of conditions us, especially at that phase of life, to like, question yourself and check those things. But, this is maybe getting a little woo woo, but I think that I think we all have, I think our internal compass is all kind of pointing us in the right direction. And, learning to listen to yourself is a really great skill that I think there's no way that if you authentically do it, it can't serve you. And I wish I would have learned to do that sooner. And like I said, I'm still learning.
How does yourself express yourself to yourself? Write that out, right? That's my team will turn that into a quote. I'll never live it down. But how do you hear yourself? You were saying learn to listen to yourself. What have you learned? Like, how does yourself talk to yourself?
I don't know that there's actually a dialogue going on, interestingly, but what I have learned for me, and this is also individual.
Oh yeah.
So for me to listen to myself is I have to sit with things. And I even like use this in business, like with hiring decisions, whatever. I can make quick decisions, but I do try to like make a decision and then let it sit for a while and observe how it feels, how my mind, my inner dialogue, I guess that's where it comes in, is reacting to it. And that will either confirm that it's the right choice, or I'm like, you know what, actually, no, let's do something else.
Yeah, that makes total sense. But I love that we're calling it out, because I think sometimes if you don't notice that's what that is, then you feel like, oh, I'm anxious now, or I have this feeling, I wish I didn't have it. It's like, no, that's a good thing. We have that on purpose. Yeah. And it's that thing that tells you maybe not. And I've made decisions, like sometimes buying things. I'm not such a big fan of buying things, and like, oh God, am I going to regret this? And you can always return it or whatnot, but I'll buy something. And if afterward it's like, okay, I'm not stressing. I was right before hitting click submit. But I'm feeling okay now. All right, let's do it. But another time, some order was placed. And it's like, nope, that feels really weird. Nope. No.
Yeah.
So you just gotta those feelings, right? You just gotta listen to that.
Exactly right. And like, so for me, again, like it sounds simple, but like, yeah, to just sit with it before acting has helped me kind of sort through that. But yeah, the buying analogy I think is good. Sometimes I'll go into a store and I'm like, oh, I want this. And then I'm like, do I, you know what? I'm going to go to other stores. And if I'm thinking about it in an hour, I will go back and get it. And half the time I'm not thinking about it.
Right. Yeah, that's smart. Doing it before and after. It makes sense, right? Listen to yourself and the feeling beforehand. And you know what's interesting? Having a conversation with yourself, maybe not in the store, because the clerk is like, who are you? Call the cops. This person's crazy. But it's almost like that inner dialogue of saying, and sometimes for more of the extroverted people, like I find even just I can ask out loud that question and I sort of answer it myself. How do I feel about this? And I feel good. Just verbalizing it makes it a little stronger of a signal.
Yeah, no, I hear you on that. Sometimes I'll have a conversation with like a friend or something. Yeah. And I hear myself say things out loud and I'm like, wait, what is that? Did I just say that? Is that what I mean? Like, yeah, I think it's really powerful to say things out loud.
Yeah, 100%. Love all of this. Sign me up. So on that note, people interested in content repurposing, or they just want to connect with you because you're a lot of fun and they learned a bunch. Social platforms, websites, throw it all out there. Where can people reach out?
Yeah, no, thanks, Casey. You make this a ton of fun.
Right.
I wasn't kidding. When I said I like how you flip the script a lot, and I think there's a lot of good stuff you're doing here. So thank you for the opportunity. LinkedIn is good. I'm there. I'm pretty active. So Jaclyn Schiff on LinkedIn, and Twitter. I go in and out. But that's also a good kind of social network for me. So I'm J_Schiff, and I'll forever kind of curse the day that I decided to use an underscore in my Twitter name, but whatever.
You're being cool.
I don't know what I was doing, but I've been on there for a long time now, so it is what it is. And then if people want to check out podreacher.com is the best place to find out more.
Okay, Podreacher. So let's just talk about that for a second. So if people have, and a lot of people listening, I know we're doing webinars. If they don't have a podcast, they should talk to me and then we'll do that. But let's say they have a podcast or they have webinars, they have this video content, especially the webinars, because I heard you on a presentation is brilliant. Almost every slide could be its own post, like own content piece. That sounds, people have like a video like this. Should they reach out to you? They should go to Podreacher. And what kind of steps should they take? Like, what's it?
Yeah, you know what? Let's do this. People should email me. And so we can give my email, in the show notes or whatever.
Do you want to say it out loud?
Jaclyn, Jaclyn, no K in there. So Jaclyn@podreacher.com. And if you're hearing this, hit me up. We'll do your first article 50% off. You can just do one, try us out. And to your point, we can take a webinar, any kind of recording, and turn it, and we'll turn it into a blog post for half price.
Sweet. That sounds like a steal. And as an example, we're going to do that for this podcast.
Yes.
Now there's like 90 articles, but we'll pick one. And so people can click and see, here's the transcript, here's the this, here's the that, and they can see how the magic converts from one thing to another.
I love it. Yeah, no, we'll take this very non-linear conversation. We'll work some magic on it. No, and through no fault of yours.
We had some linear portions to it.
We did. That's true.
We did. Just enough linear to make a good content and just enough craziness to make it good listening, hopefully.
The perfect combination.
You know what? Or if no one else is listening, it's just you and I were talking.
We had a good time.
Conference room is empty.
Oh my
The janitor's
gosh.
like turning off the lights. No, we're still presenting.
Yeah,
We're still
seriously.
here. Don't
Yeah.
leave.
Yeah.
Yeah, this was fun. Thanks for coming on here.
Thank you, Casey. No, like I said, had a blast, and appreciate the opportunity.
Right on. And for those listening, still the 3,000 of you left here in the auditorium. It started at 100, so now there's only 3 now. If you learned something, share this episode, share the knowledge, or even Jackie's information with other people so that they can take part in this and they can learn something. That's thought leadership. Just simply sharing a nugget of wisdom with other people, the methods for repurposing, even the idea from henceforth, take the fact that transcripts are not the foundation. They're just helpful. Take that with you. And now whenever you tell someone that, you'll know, hey, this was the podcast, and you'll know the person that told you too. So anyways, that's thought leadership. That's my thing on that. Jackie, you're the best. Thanks again.
Thank you.
All right. And that's it. This has been, that's not just, that's it. That's an episode, man. What a great episode.
Was it okay? Even
wrap.
with the interruption, I feel so
No,
bad.
it was great. And so with that being said, this has been another episode of the Hardcore Marketing Show. We will catch you all next time.